All right. I am Kim Rudolph, and I am a senior manager at Great Minds. I have dedicated my career to making sure that sorry.
Continue.
Okay. I dedicated to making and creating a curriculum that is engaging and meaningful for all students. Sorry, I'm behind. Can I start over? It's this thing. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I really focus on phenomena in the NGSS. The NGSS requires three-dimensional learning. It requires students to learn science by doing science. Students are asked to use science practices and lenses to make sense of those core disciplinary ideas. The NGSS requires a significant instructional shift in education. It requires students to actively make sense of phenomenon and engage in scientific practices. The instruction is dedicated to making sense of real-world scenarios and problems. In of itself, NGSS is inclusive, has an inclusive framework as students are doing the learning. They are the scientists. So what is phenomenon? Phenomenon is an event or a situation that can be observed and explained through scientific principles. For example, if I wanted to study the Grand Canyon and how the Grand Canyon forms, I can use scientific principles to understand that event or a situation. So let's look at some examples. Here, first graders are trying to understand pushes and pulls. This is an NGSS standard that these activities were aligned to. Not to say that there's anything wrong with these activities, however, it's a disconnect between the NGSS because students are not making sense of an event or a situation. So let's look at an example that does. Here, in first grade, students are trying to make sense of how tugboats pull large cargo ships through the New York harbor. Now they have a reason to understand what a push and a pull is. So they start off their learning just with this context of how this tiny little tugboat uses pushes and pulls. And in the end, they're using their scientific principles of motion to be able to understand and answer the question. Let's look at another example. Here, students are trying to understand the patterns of the motion of the sun, moon, and stars. They're reading about it. They're reading about the patterns. Again, not in a context within an event or a situation. So let's look at an example, and this was one of my favorites because I wrote it. But this is using the navigation of the Polynesians. Polynesians observed the sun, moon, and stars to navigate between each of the islands. And so now students, why can't students learn how to observe the sun, moon, and stars, figure out the patterns, then predict motion, and then they can answer the question of how Polynesians were able to navigate in the middle of the ocean with no landmarks. It's pretty incredible. Here's one of my favorites. First graders have to figure out that mirrors can be used to reflect a light beam. Here's a reflection challenge I found online that meets this standard, and I'm hoping they actually do this in the classroom. But instead, why not have students explore this? This is the town of Rukon. Rukon is, in the winter, is constantly in a shadow. They have absolutely no sunlight for the whole entire year, or entire winter. And so they asked engineers to help them. And so students learn how mirrors can be used to reject sunlight onto the town square. So this is phenomenon that we're trying to get students, science education, students learning about. And in assessments, students should be using phenomenon in assessments. Here, students are learning about glowworms. Here, they're learning about how to do a skateboard. Here, they're trying to figure out different kinds of strawberry plants that grow in different months to understand sun and the movement of sun. So selecting rich phenomena is probably the hardest part of my job, is figuring out what to select. So we focus on social significance, classroom relevance, everyday connection, and historical connection. Now, how do we do that within a lesson? Well, we pose a phenomenon, an event or a situation. Students wonder about it. They organize, they think about what do they know and what do they still have to learn. Then students, by the help of their teacher, is guided through a ton of activities that's instructed to give them that opportunity to understand those disciplinary ideas that's connected to the activity. Then they steal the information, answer the event or situation, and then they apply that to a different phenomenon. It's all about curiosity about their world, engaging experiences, inspires students to wonder about the world, and empowers them to make sense of it. Thank you so much.